They're all liars, he said. Am I to believe that there are people writing newsletters that are exaggerating claims?
I've had to deal with this all my life.
From the NXT studio in Southern California, this is the Power and Market Report. I'm Albert Liu. I'm joined now by Dr. Mark Skousen. He's the author and professor of economics, who's also the former president of FEE, Foundation for Economic Education. He's the producer of FreedomFest, the world's largest gathering of free minds, which meets every July in Las Vegas. Check that out at freedomfest.com. Dr. Skousen, thanks for joining me back on the Power and Market Report. How are you?
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I'm here in New York, but we were in Southern California just a month ago. My wife and I teach at Chapman University.
That's right. I've been there. Very impressive campus, I must say, and a free market bent, which is very refreshing.
Yes, absolutely. It's the only campus I know of that has a statue of Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman and Adam Smith and Ronald Reagan. It's really quite an amazing perspective on today's college campuses.
Definitely. And like I said, beautiful campus. I want to talk to you about an article you wrote recently. The title is Anyone Telling the Truth About the Stock Market? I enjoyed this article. You write in there that you received a letter from an old friend who complained about a recent online promotion. They're all liars, he said. Am I to believe that there are people writing newsletters that are exaggerating claims or making false claims, Dr. Skousen? Is that what he's trying to say?
I've had to deal with this all my life, and even with my own promotions, publishers always want to put their best foot forward, and sometimes that means exaggerating the returns. But I found over time that this is what people want. You're actually just giving people what people want. If you gave a promotion that was totally 100% accurate, you probably wouldn't get anyone to subscribe. People want to believe that they can beat the market on a regular basis, and they need to understand that it's very tough. And so I always have this struggle myself in promotional copy and try to say, hey, listen, can't we list some of the times I was wrong and that my predictions were wrong or my investment advice was wrong? And so we do try to put that in our promotions, but people do tend to, newsletter writers, promoters tend to over-exaggerate because that seems to be what really works, unfortunately.
Yeah, the wild claims, the shocking narratives, the extremely long-form copy. What other things have you found over the years that work?
Well, I'm not a big fan of the long copy either. I would rather just click and get to, or just be able to read it rather than listen as someone goes on and on. But, the biggest danger, because a lot of these promotions, especially when they're scare tactics, when they tell people get out of the stock market's going to crash, sell your stocks and buy gold and buy guns and buy survival food. That's worked during certain periods of crisis, but most of the time the stock market's going up. Most of the time gold is not doing anything. So I think we do ourselves a disservice in the newsletter business when we over-exaggerate and we scare people. I've written a book called The Maxims of Wall Street, and the subtitle is Bears Make Headlines, Bulls Make Money. And I think that's really true, and I've learned that lesson myself. I started out in the 1970s in the gold bug movement when you stayed out of stocks and bonds and you bought gold, silver, and Swiss francs and real estate. And I changed my perspective in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was elected. I started my newsletter the year he was elected. And I've generally been on the bullish side. And so as a result, I'm a survivor because I've overall given people good advice. I've made my share of mistakes, but overall I've been long-term positive about the markets. And a lot of my subscribers have made a lot of money because of it.
Yeah, I guess the thing about being an advocate of gold is that you're going to be wrong most of the time. When you're right in a pretty big way. So how did you deal with sort of I guess the decade 2000 to 2010, where gold was really moving, and then it also encompassed the financial crisis? What were you telling people back then?
Well, I was mainly in the stock market. I was invested during the financial crisis of 2008. Did not get entirely out. We did move to cash position for some of our funds because we wanted to be in a position to buy cheaply. But it's very difficult for everyone to get out at the top and buy at the bottom and so forth. And I found that traditionally I'm better at picking the bottoms of the marketplace than I am at getting out at the top. I did call the 1987 stock market crash, but that was the last time I ever said get out of stocks completely, because I learned that the government had the unique ability to intervene in a surprising way to turn things around. And indeed, every bear market has been followed by a major bull market that took us to new highs. So I think overall, while I was not able to get out at every top, I've been able to dollar cost average and give people sound advice. I did call the mother of all bull markets over the last 10 years. I've been 100% invested. I did not buy into the doom and gloomers who are predicting the mother of all bear markets during this time period. And so I think I served my subscribers well during that time period.
One of the challenges, if you're going to have that type of strategy, is convincing people to stay with you during the really deep corrections that are going to inevitably happen if you're in mostly an equity portfolio. So what do you tell people at the bottom or near the bottom when they just can't be consoled? How do you get them to stick with the strategy?
Well, one of the things that I've moved toward is dividend-paying stocks, and I show a number of charts that show that dividend-paying stocks are cyclical. They will go down with the rest of the market, but they cushion the fall because you're getting a dividend, and in the case of the dividend stocks that I was recommending, they were actually raising their dividend, and that's very comforting to investors to know that here's a company that's fundamentally sound, that is making money during a bear market, is increasing the dividend, and it's sustainable. And that's very comforting to people. So I told them, hold on, because things will turn around. And indeed they have, and they're very grateful. I've received many letters from people who are happy that they stayed with me during the bear markets.
I guess the dividend already, the fact that it's being paid is an indication that you're dealing with a quality financially sound company, although you are going to pay up for that. So do you have any problem doing that, or what types of things do you look at to decide whether or not this firm really is worth a premium?
Well, you do have to look at the fundamentals, because dividends can be cut, they can be eliminated, and in 2008 we were in General Motors, and not General Motors, but Bank of America, and they eliminated or cut their dividend to like 10 cents or something. And so we got out of that stock right away and got into Verizon and Pfizer and a few other stocks that continued to increase their dividends. So we recommend three approaches in our stock selection. One, they have to be quality companies that are actually making money in a growing industry. That's really important. Number two, they have to pay an above average dividend. And number three, they have to have a growing dividend policy. So that's really a quality approach to investing, a peace of mind, because what you have is quality companies, above average yield, and a growing yield, growing dividend, and you put those three together and you have a winning formula. So, I mean, I've outperformed the market for the last 15 years, according to the Holbert Financial Digest, by using this strategy. But you have to be very selective. I mean, there aren't very many companies that qualify, that pay dividends, rising dividend, above average dividend, and are in they are companies that are doing well in a burgeoning industry. That's really important.
Let's shift gears to FreedomFest, the conference that you host every July in Las Vegas. Looks like you got a great lineup here. Tell the viewers who you have coming in this year.
Well, every year we put together a conference with a new theme. Our theme this year is the Wild West, and that kind of describes a lot that's going on in Washington and around the world. We have Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank fame, who is coming in to give us the cold, hard truth about money and investing. He's going to debate John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods Markets, on the subject of the purpose of business. John Mackey says business has a higher purpose than just making money. It's the beautiful, the good, the heroic, while Kevin O'Leary takes a rather harsh view that it's only about the money. If you want a friend, buy a dog, he says. So that's going to be a fun debate. But we have a lot of debates, a lot of sessions. We have Candace Owens coming, who's a fiery conservative who has confronted Congress in the past. And we have Steve Moore and Herman Cain, who were both going to be nominated by President Trump to be on the Fed. So we're going to talk to them about what their policies would be regarding the Federal Reserve. We have the Anthem Film Festival that my wife is involved with, and we have all kinds of libertarian films that are being shown. We have the Trade Show for Liberty. We have our exhibit hall that's full of all the free market think tanks like Reason and Cato and Students for Liberty, Heartland Institute. We have all of the major organizations coming together. So we have over 250 speakers who are coming in and speaking this year. So if people go to freedomfest.com, they'll see we're about to post our entire program here in the next couple of days, and people will be able to see all the great events we have. And we encourage people to join us. We usually have a couple thousand people coming to our conference, so it's really a gigantic affair, and people love it. We get people coming back every year. So our dates are July 17th through the 20th at the Paris Resort in Las Vegas. So we consider ourselves the intellectual feast in the entertainment capital of the world.
I know a friend of ours, Doug Casey, is a regular. Peter Schiff is a regular there. I always have a lot of fun watching those two gentlemen. Speaking of...
Yeah, there are super bears there. We have quite a few super bulls also, like Alex Green and Louis Navalier, who are going to be there. By the way, we're also going to have the Vince Foster, the CEO of Main Street Capital. We were talking earlier about my dividend-paying stocks. Main Street Capital is one of my top recommendations. It's up 23% this year. And the CEO, Vince Foster, is coming to speak for the very first time. He does not normally speak at conferences, but he will be coming to ours. So it's really going to be a great time, and we're looking forward to meeting him.
The last time I went, I really remember enjoying the film festival that your wife puts on. And I just want to ask you, over the years, we talk about sort of what people want, giving people what they want in terms of narrative, marketing, whatever. How has that changed over the years? What are your audience? Because you always draw a really great, large, engaged audience. Has their taste changed over the years?
Well, we've been doing Freedom Fest for the last 12 years, and it does change depending on our themes. I think we've done a really good job of figuring out what is on the minds of people. For example, when you had the Tea Party movement, that was a very active thing in 2000 and right after the financial crisis during that time period. So we did a conference called, Are We Headed for a New American Revolution or a French Revolution? And that got a lot of interest and a big turnout as we made those comparisons. Then we did one, Are We Rome? And that seemed to resonate with a lot of people. Then we did one on the American Dream, or is the American Dream still alive? We did that in 2015. And we actually had President Donald, or not president, but when he was campaigning, candidate Donald Trump came and spoke there. And we had Glenn Beck and Senator I guess it was Marco Rubio. He came and spoke. Senator Mike Lee and others. By the way, this year we have Penn Jillette and Glenn Beck both on the stage together on Friday. We also have a mock trial, by the way, called this year. Our mock trial is the Second Amendment. Since it's the Wild West theme, we're doing the Second Amendment, putting the Second Amendment on trial. So people do change their views over time, and I mean we've gone through George W. Bush as president. We've gone through the financial crisis of 2008. During that time period, the 8 years of the Obama administration. So lots of discussion on medical healthcare, health issues, and Obamacare and so forth. So the topics do change from time to time, and we adjust to whatever that kind of situation is.
What was the reception to President Trump when he spoke there as candidate Trump, and how would it be different if he went back to speak this year?
Well, he came in 2015. We had a lot of libertarians who were quite angry with us that we had Trump come because he had insulted the Mexican people and said some things that were certainly not libertarian. But we welcomed him. I would say the audience, which was standing room only, he had a huge audience. The exhibit hall was empty. Everybody was there to hear him speak. I'd say half the people gave him a standing ovation, and half the people sat on their hands. So if he came back today, I suspect it would be the same way, because he's doing some controversial things. In terms of trade and tariffs. We're having Steve Moore and Don Boudreau from GMU debate Trump's trade war. We did a cruise in November. We were planning a cruise. We had a very successful cruise going to Cuba in November, and President Trump just canceled our cruise. We had 85 people wanting to see firsthand what was going on in communist Cuba, and they're not able to do that now. So, our people are pretty upset about things like that, where your freedoms are restricted for whatever short-term reason, and I don't think it's going to be effective to stop the communists from staying in power in Cuba. They've shown a resilience there. We're having a big session on Venezuela, the great tragedy of 32 million Venezuelans starving and being and seeing their freedoms destroyed. And here's a country that's has more assets, the richest country in South America, now the poorest because of communist rule. So we're going to have a lot of discussion about socialism and the threat of socialism, even in America, at our FreedomFest conference. Steve Forbes is one of our co-ambassadors, and he says he loves FreedomFest. He changed his schedule originally. He was just going to fly in and then fly out, but when he saw our schedule, he said he changed the schedule to attend all 3 days. So we get a lot of people who love FreedomFest who come back on a regular basis, because we change our theme every year with what we think is the mood of the country.
That's going to be July 17th through 20th. FreedomFest.com is the website. Mark, any last words for the viewers?
Well, I would just say that the reason we started FreedomFest was we were feeling that we were losing our freedoms, that more and more everything is either being prohibited or mandated. And we think there's strength in numbers, and we have people who come to FreedomFest, and it changes their lives forever. They said, I had no idea there were so many people who think the way I do. I felt isolated. And when you come together at FreedomFest and you're there to learn, to network, to socialize, and to celebrate liberty, it's just a great feeling. And I would encourage people to make every effort to change their plans or whatever, to join us every July, and in this case, July 17th through the 20th, at the Paris Resort in Las Vegas, and find out how much a wonderful experience it is.
Nicely put. Dr. Skousen, thank you very much for joining me again on the Power Market Report. I look forward to speaking with you again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you, Albert. My pleasure.